At this very moment, as the sound of my voice reaches you, just allow your eyes ever so slowly to drift closed. Please know, with absolute certainty, that you have crossed the threshold into a sanctuary of complete safety. Within this sacred enclosure, no one will come to disturb you. There are no sudden crises requiring your attention, and no sharp, piercing words can penetrate this invisible veil of protection. All the deafening noise of the outside world, all of its relentless demands, all of its hostile judgments, they have come to a complete and utter standstill just beyond this boundary. You no longer need to play the role of the weary gladiator, forever braced for the next battle. You no longer need to hold up the heavy facade of having it all together. Here in this space, you are completely safe. Every single inch of your vulnerability is allowed, validated, and draped in the most profound, gentle grace. I know you are so very tired. In this chaotic, clamoring world, you have been functioning as a compulsive architect of order, desperately trying to maintain every ounce of dignity and every rigid rule in a life that perpetually feels out of control. Day and night you hold up that heavy iron shield, guarding against the misunderstandings of others, hyper-vigilant against sudden upheavals, and in every single moment you are provoked or triggered, your soul endures a violent, exhausting hemorrhage of energy. But as we embark upon this long, deep spiritual journey together, we will encounter the traveler who could sleep soundly through the most violent gales. We will meet the shepherd who finally laid down his heavy yoke in the dim, quiet valleys. We will sit with the desert fathers, silent and unmovable as mountains in the wilderness. And as you journey with them, you will slowly begin to discover that true, indestructible strength never comes from how fiercely you will fight back. It is completely okay if you've never tried any form of contemplative prayer before, or if you have no idea how to quiet your mind. It is perfectly fine if, right now, your brain is still spinning like an overheated engine emitting a deafening roar, unable to shut down, still cluttered with the arguments of the day, the judging eyes of others, and endless waves of regret. Even if you are covered in exhaustion, tightly bound by that unspeakable, suffocating anxiety, anger, and helplessness, it truly does not matter. This is a wilderness season with no threshold for entry. It unconditionally receives all of your brokennesses, all of your tension, and all of your beautiful, messy uncertainty. As the beloved spiritual director Father Henry now and once so gently wrote, in our weariness and our weakness, we are invited into a sacred rest. You do not need to prove anything here. You do not need to defend yourself. You only need to allow yourself to be wholly loved, to be entirely held and anchored by a grace far more vast than yourself. This is a solemn, profound wisdom, one that will bring you the ultimate lasting peace. Tonight, all spiritual transformation will softly unfold within this safe, comforting darkness. That hardened armor of your subconscious defense will begin to melt away, layer by gentle layer. Now, I invite you to ever so slowly adjust your posture. Find a position where your spine, the nape of your neck, feels entirely supported. Notice the gravity. Notice how the mattress or the chair rises up to cradle the weight of your body. Now together, let us draw in a deep, slow breath, breathing the cool, cleansing air into your tight, restricted chest, and then a long, lingering exhale. With this breath out, just surrender every heavy, stinging burden. Release all the people and circumstances that have provoked you, laying them down at the altar of grace. Let us slow the metronome of time, gently pushing the focus of your consciousness back to a sweltering, heavy dusk 2,000 years ago. It is deep into the night on the Sea of Galilee. The air is thick with a heavy, oppressive moisture, carrying the distinctive briny, earthen scent of the lake. The surrounding world was originally cloaked in an unsettling, dead silence. But suddenly, the wind howls down from the surrounding valleys like a feral beast. The atmospheric pressure plummets in an instant. Heavy, ink-black clouds press down upon the water, casting deep, resonant shadows, as if threatening to swallow everything in the amber gloom. Listen to the wind. It is no longer a gentle breeze, but a harrowing, piercing shriek. Massive waves are whipped up by the gale, rising like towering walls of black obsidian, crashing violently against the fragile wooden hull of a tiny fishing boat. Under the brutal tearing of the waves, the wooden planks groan and creak in agony. The icy, unforgiving water relentlessly floods the cabin, soaking the rough-hewn ropes, soaking the garments of the men aboard. The disciples have descended into sheer, blinding panic. They stumble and fall across the pitching, tilting deck, desperately pulling at the sails, shouting to one another until their voices break. Every single one of them is fighting tooth and nail, desperately trying to wrestle back control of this tiny vessel. Their faces, illuminated by flashes of chaotic light, are etched with the sheer terror of death and the furious anger of utter helplessness. Yet, in the very eye of this chaotic, deafening, and desperate storm, at the stern of this little boat that could capsize at any second, there exists a scene of the most profound, almost jarring contrast. There, in the narrowest, most violently pitching corner of the stern, resting his head on a rough leather cushion, a traveler named Jesus is fast asleep. I invite you to draw all of your attention to that sleeping silhouette. Notice the ultimate, hypnotic cadence of relaxation radiating from that image. His body sways and lifts with the violent pitching of the waves, yet not a single muscle is braced or tense. The howling wind ravages his hair, the icy spray splashes against his dust-covered ankles. Yet his breathing remains as deep, long, and steady as the ocean floor. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. The outside world is collapsing, the outside world is screaming. But his inner world is anchored in a grace so heavy and profound that no external fury could ever disturb it. This little boat, violently thrashing in the storm, is it not the exact reflection of the life we navigate every single day? Those howling winds, they are the reckless judgments, the accusations, the unreasonable demands that others hurl at us. Those massive waves crashing into the hull, they are the sudden, unforeseen tragedies, the unfair treatments, the offenses that cause our blood pressure to spike in an instant. When faced with these people and situations that trigger our anger, we instinctively morph into those panicked disciples. We scream and shout on the inner decks of our souls. We angrily shake our fists, desperately trying to correct the errors of others, trying to forcefully smooth out the raging sea. We are so easily provoked because, deep down in our absolute core, we are terrified. We are terrified of being invalidated. We are terrified of losing control. We are terrified that if we do not fight back, our very self-worth will be utterly drowned in this tempest, and so we use every ounce of our strength gripping the heavy or called defense, until our hands are blistered and bleeding, until our souls are utterly depleted. But right now, that sleeping traveler is using the steady rhythm of his breath to gently invite you. Lay down the oar. Notice your hands in this moment. Are your fingers still unconsciously slightly curled inward? Are they still holding on to the residual tension of the day, that desperate need to grasp to fight against something? Now, guided by the soothing cadence of my voice, allow your fingers one by one to slowly soften and release. Imagine yourself letting go of that wooden or that has exhausted you for so long. Let your palms open completely, adopting a posture of surrender, palms facing upward to the heavens. Breathe in deeply, inhaling the grace to accept the inevitable loss of control in this life. Slowly exhale, allowing your arms, your shoulders to surrender to the pull of gravity, sinking deeply, heavily into the soft embrace of your bed. Notice your jaw, that is the place where we grit our teeth to battle the world. Now, just allow your upper and lower teeth to part ever so slightly. Soften the root of your tongue. Soften the tiny muscles around your eyes. You no longer need to stare wide-eyed into the dark, hyper-vigilant for danger. Within the heavy, rhythmic sound of your breathing, allow yourself to be just like that traveler in the stern. Relinquish the illusion of control over the storm. Even if the waves crash furiously outside, even if others have misunderstood you, even if things did not unfold according to your expectations, in this sacred, suspended moment, none of it has anything to do with you. You only need to surrender your body to the surface beneath you. You only need to surrender your soul to that unfathomable, sacred stillness. The story continues into that pitch-black night. The disciples finally reach their breaking point. They rush to the stern, shaking the sleeping man awake, shouting in a mixture of terror and furious resentment, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Within that desperate cry echoes the very same interrogation we hurl at the universe when we feel wronged and abandoned. The man slowly opens his eyes. There is absolutely no panic in his gaze, nor is there any irritation at being disturbed. He calmly rises to his feet, standing upon that violently lurching deck, facing the pitch black galened, the monstrous waves that threaten to devour everything. He does not scold the disciples for their weakness. He does not wrestle with the storm. He simply, with a profound, cosmic sovereignty drawn from the very depths of the universe, speaks a few quiet words into the raging wind and sea. Peace. Be still. The voice is not loud, yet it pierces through the deafening chaos. And in that very fraction of a second, a miracle unfolds. The gale that was shrieking with feral madness just a moment prior is suddenly, abruptly choked off as if silenced by an invisible, massive hand. The towering, destructive walls of black water lose all their momentum, collapsing instantly into themselves. The entire world falls into an awe-inspiring, ultimate, and absolute silence. I invite you to truly feel the profound stillness of that sudden void of sound. It is that faint, hollow ringing in the eardrums, that vast emptiness one feels after enduring deafening noise. The moisture in the air no longer whips about violently. Instead, it settles into a thin, gentle mist, drifting lazily down upon the water like dust motes in the moonlight. The tiny boat, once thrashing violently, now yields only the faintest, gentlest creak of wood rubbing against wood. The surface of the sea transforms into a massive, black obsidian, mirror-deep, fathomless, without a single ripple. This is the ultimate spiritual elevation born of sacred surrender. When you finally realize that your true worth, your dignity, and your security are not built upon the calm waters of the external world, nor upon the validation or submission of others, you are then granted the sovereign privilege to look at the storm and say, "Be still." Those people who try to provoke you, those grating, piercing words, they are nothing but a sudden gust of wind across the surface of the lake. They can only stir the superficial waters. They can never, ever reach the profound, silent ocean depths of your soul. You do not need to fight the wind. You do not need to battle the waves. You only need to sink downward, sinking into that abyssal depth where no surface storm can ever reach. As grace descends, you can finally, completely relinquish your compulsive grip on life. Lay down your defenses, lay down your anger. Because when you no longer hold up the shield, you will discover that there is actually nothing in this world that can truly harm the you that is anchored and held by the divine. Now, let your consciousness follow the calming waters, sinking deeper and deeper, ever so slowly, drifting down into the deepest trenches of your mind. Notice your legs becoming incredibly heavy, like two iron anchors plunging to the ocean floor, embedding themselves firmly into a bedrock of absolute safety. Notice your torso being enveloped by a warm, thick blanket of the dark night. Every soft breath you take is like the faintest ripple forming on the surface of the lake, expanding outward and then dissolving into boundless tranquility. In this night of absolute silence, the little boat rocks gently, ever so slowly, upon the mirror-like water. The storm clouds in the sky have parted, revealing the brilliant, distant starlight. The starlight spills across your softened cheeks, carrying a tender, divine reassurance. You can finally do nothing. You can finally think of nothing. Just sway with this gentle rocking, sinking into an unfathomable, defenseless, and holy sleep. Notice how that deep-sea stillness, completely undisturbed by the outside world, has already woven itself into the fabric of your breath. Now, having moved past the illusion of the storm, we must journey even deeper. Please allow us riding the rhythm of this long, drawn-out breath to very slowly float upward from those dim, cooling waters. Do not rush to open your eyes. Please keep your eyes gently closed and slowly draw your awareness back to the physical body that is currently lying or sitting here. Notice the vast, heavy sensation of contact between the skin of your back and the surface beneath you. Feel the gravitational pull of the earth, drawing you downward with an irresistible, yet incredibly tender force. Your bones, your muscles, even the blood flowing through your veins, are all yielding to this downward pull, becoming heavier and heavier, softer and softer. I know that during your waking hours, you are constantly forced to maintain a tight braced posture, always ready to speak. In that chaotic arena called reality, you are just so exhausted. Every day, you have to face countless judging eyes, countless demanding mouths. When misunderstandings fly at you like hidden arrows, when others interrogate you with biased, loaded tones, or even when someone baselessly invalidates your hard work, Your first instinct is always to subconsciously raise every quill on your body. Your heart rate instantly spikes. Your brain goes into overdrive, frantically drafting the perfect rebuttal in your mind. You are desperate to prove your innocence, desperate to correct their errors, desperate to scream, "I am not that kind of person. You don't know me at all." This compulsive need for self-defense, this agonizing thirst to be seen correctly, is like a massively heavy suit of cast iron armor, tightly clamped around your chest, suffocating you in the dead of night. You have been imprisoned by a few careless words on the tips of others' tongues. You have become a captive to the gaze of the world. Right now, we are going to completely strip away this heavy armor. Please follow the guidance of my voice and, within your mind's eye, completely shift the environment around you. The cool, damp mist slowly fades away, replaced by an intensely dry, searing heat. We are crossing the boundaries of time and space. Touching down in the 4th century Egyptian wilderness, the set is desert. Here, there are no flashing smartphone screens, no chiming notifications, no suffocating arguments in conference rooms. Even the chirping of insects and birds has been stripped away by the extreme drought. There's nothing here but an endless expanse of yellow sand, rough, jagged rocks baked scorching hot by the unforgiving sun, and the hollow, low, resonant whoosh of the wind sweeping across the dunes. It is an environmental white noise that borders on absolute, cosmic deadness. In this vast, sprawling barrenness, all human arguments over reputation, pride, right and wrong, become as utterly insignificant as a single grain of sand. Deep within the heart of this wilderness lies a desert father named Abba Macarius. He sits there like a block of black basalt in the wasteland, silent, impenetrable, entirely unmovable by anything the world throws at him. One day, a young monk, his heart consumed by anxiety, crosses the burning sands to find him. He asks with desperate urgency, "Abba, how can I attain true salvation and rest for my soul? My inner peace is constantly manipulated by the words of others. What must I do?" Abba Macarius does not answer him immediately. His eyes, deep and clouded from a lifetime of gazing into the blinding desert sun, look quietly at the young monk. After a long silence, he points a weathered finger toward a distant graveyard and speaks in a voice that is incredibly raspy and agonizingly slow. Go to the cemetery. Stand before the dead and praise them loudly. Flatter them with the most magnificent, glorious words you can summon. Though utterly bewildered, the young monk obeys. He stands among the tombs, shouting praises at the dry bones. When he returns to the Abba, exhausted and panting, Macarius asks him, "How did they respond to your praises?" The monk shakes his head. "They said nothing." "Abba," Macarius gives a slow nod and continues, "Now, go back. This time, hurl the most vicious, venomous insults at them. Slander them. Throw heavy stones at their graves." The monk returns to the cemetery, hysterically cursing and humiliating the dead. When he returns once more, Macarius asks this time, "Did they leap out of their graves to argue with you? Did they furiously explain to you how great and innocent they were in life?" The monk lowers his head. "No, Abba." They remained as silent as the grave. Abba Macarius turns his gaze back toward the swirling yellow sands, whipped up by the desert wind, and slowly says, "If you wish to find true rest, you must become as a dead man in the face of this world's praises and its slanders. A dead man requires no defense. A dead man requires no defense." Allow this profoundly earth-shattering truth to echo in your mind over and over again, keeping time with the slow, rhythmic rising and falling of your breath. Now, gather your attention and place it gently upon your throat and your jaw. This is the epicenter of the disaster zone, the place you use every single day to fire verbal bullets, the place you use to build your defensive barricades. Just notice it. Are your teeth still slightly clenched? Is the root of your tongue still rigidly pressed against the roof of your mouth? Deep inside your throat, are you still choking on the unspoken grievances and the unexpressed anger of the day? Let us do this together. Draw in a deep, long breath. Imagine that pure, bone-dry wilderness wind flowing through your nasal passages, washing over your throat. Exhale, slowly and completely, and in the exact moment of your exhale consciously, deliberately soften your jaw. Allow your upper and lower lips to part slightly. Let your tongue rest heavy and limp at the floor of your mouth. Soften your vocal cords. Surrender the urge to organize any language, any defense. in this vast wilderness. No one is putting you on trial, so you no longer need to gather evidence of your innocence. Those who misunderstand you, those who hurl reckless judgments at you, their words are nothing more than a dry, searing wind blowing across the desert. The wind will whip up the sand. The wind will beat against the rocks. But the rock never opens its mouth to explain to the wind, "You shouldn't blow this way." The rock just sits there, in profound stillness, allowing the wind to pass over it. And eventually, the wind just vanishes. Breathe in deeply, acknowledging the pain of being wronged. Breathe out deeply, and let that self, that exhausted ego desperately trying to prove its innocence, sink, along with all its heavy resentment, deep into this fathomless sea of sand. Abba Macarius did not just teach with words. He used his entire life to build an impenetrable fortress of silence. One day, after years of ascetic devotion in the wilderness, he was violently dragged out of his hermitage cave by the people of a nearby village. The mob screamed in feral rage, spitting in his face, wrapping a rough, abrasive hemp rope around his neck. As it turned out, a young, unmarried girl in the village had become pregnant. To hide the truth, she lied to the villagers, pointing her finger and accusing the revered, holy Abba of violating her. What a devastating, soul-crushing slander! The spotless reputation he had accumulated over a lifetime, the holiness he had won through brutal self-denial, was violently ripped to shreds in an instant. The villagers hung heavy iron pots and shattered clay jugs around his neck. They paraded him through the streets like a dog on a leash. People hurled jagged stones at him. They cursed him with the most vile, unspeakable obscenities. "Look at him. This is your hypocritical monk. This is the monster hiding beneath the cloak of a saint." Just imagine, for a moment, if you were placed in the center of such extreme humiliation and staggering injustice. How would you react? Would you scream at the heavens in fury? Would you thrash with every ounce of your strength, shouting yourself hoarse to declare your innocence? Would you feel your very internal organs combusting from the sheer, burning agony of being so entirely wronged? But Abba Macarius did not. He did not scream. He did not shed a single tear of grievance. He did not offer half a syllable of explanation to a single soul. He simply, with the most terrifying calmness, yielded to the shoving and pushing of the mob. The expression on his face was exactly like the dry bones he had pointed to in the graveyard, void of anger, void of terror. He had entered into a state of profound, impenetrable spiritual hibernation. Inside this fortress of stillness, not even a single needle of the outside world's curses could pierce his skin. When the villagers finally tired of beating him, they demanded that he take full responsibility for providing for the woman. The once worshipped desert father simply, silently, returned to his cave. He turned to his young disciple, who had followed him in tears, and said with unimaginable tranquility, "Macarius, you have now found yourself a wife. From this day forward, you must work day and night without ceasing, so that you may have enough food to feed her." And so, for the next 6 months, this entirely innocent, holy man sat in the scorching desert, weaving baskets from reeds day and night. He silently delivered the food and coins he earned to the home of the very woman who had framed him. He utterly relinquished his addiction to innocence. He laid down the vain ego attached to the title of Abba. He willingly allowed himself to become the scum of the earth in the eyes of the world, until, months later, the woman went into labor. She writhed in agonizing, excruciating pain for days and nights, unable to deliver the child, tortured to the brink of death by her physical agony and the unbearable weight of her conscience. She finally broke, screaming in pain. She confessed the truth to the midwives and the surrounding villagers. "I lied. The child is not his. I framed the innocent saint." The truth was laid bare. The entire village was plunged into a state of absolute shock and bone-crushing guilt. Weeping bitterly, they ran in droves toward the wilderness, desperate to fall at the feet of Abba Macarius, begging for his forgiveness, ready to once again shower him with the most magnificent praises for his greatness and his holiness. Yet, when the villagers arrived at the cave, it was entirely empty. The Abba, having heard that the truth had come to light, had fled in the dead of night. Desperate to escape their praises and their apologies, he had walked even deeper, even further into the desolate, unforgiving heart of the desert. For a man who is already completely dead to the evaluations of this world, whether you throw dirty water in his face or lay crowns of flowers at his feet, it is all nothing but illusory. weightless dust. Now, allow this ancient story to transform into a warm, grounding energy, flowing gently downward from the crown of your head, flowing over your brow, smoothing out the deeply etched lines of your worry. You do not need to figure out how to outsmart the difficult person tomorrow, flowing over your shoulders. Notice how that heavy suit of armor called self-defense is flaking off, piece by piece. Listen to the heavy iron plates thudding into the soft desert's end. Thud, thud. With every piece of armor that falls away, your body becomes lighter and lighter. What a magnificent, triumphant spiritual elevation this is, when you finally, utterly abandon your compulsive need to control the narrative. When you relinquish the desperate need to prove to the world that I am right, you actually lose nothing. Instead, you gain the ultimate freedom. You become a silent fortress. Others can misunderstand you, they can slander you, they can look down on you, but they can never, ever provoke you again. Because a provocation requires a target, and now that defensive, thorn-covered target has simply dissolved into the silence of the wilderness. Deep breath in, inhaling this invincible, untouchable freedom. Deep breath out, allowing your body to sink even deeper, even heavier into the warm, supportive sea of sand beneath you. Night has fully descended upon the desert. The blistering heat of the day vanishes rapidly, leaving the air beautifully cool and still. A canopy of stars like crushed diamonds scattered across black velvet looks down silently upon this land of rest. You do not need to say a single word. You do not need to do a single thing. You only need to be here, basking in the weightless grace of this absolute, unbothered silence. Continue to sink, sinking toward the deeper realms of your subconscious, toward that defenseless sanctuary of true sleep. 1, 2, 3, sleep. Let your breathing become as faint and drawn out as the wind brushing over the dunes. The dry, burning winds and the swirling yellow sands of the Egyptian desert have completely dissolved at the edges of your consciousness. In this silent fortress where self-defense is no longer required, you have tasted an unparalleled lightness. But we cannot remain in the barren wasteland. Now do not attempt to open your eyes. Please allow your physical body to remain in this state of deep, heavy sinking. Gently gather your attention away from the external void and slowly reel it back in, resting it upon your arms, your shoulders, and the joints of your 10 fingers. Perceive them closely. During those long waking years, do you constantly feel a dull ache in your shoulders? Is the back of your neck rigid as stone? Do you find your hands unconsciously clasped tight, as if you are desperately gripping onto something everywhere you go? Yes. This is the profound trauma left upon your body by the desire to control. In this modern world, so saturated with terrifying uncertainty, you have contracted a hidden illness called compulsive control. You are utterly terrified of losing your grip, terrified of things derailing from your meticulously planned tracks. You constantly try to micromanage every single detail of existence, the progress of your work, the emotional states of others, the subtle, invisible shifts in interpersonal dynamics, and even things that fall completely outside your sphere of responsibility. You feel that you must remain hypervigilant at all times, that you must keep your eyes on everything. You believe that the moment you relax, the moment you blink, this fragile house of cards you call your life will violently collapse. This terror of the unknown has turned you into a sentinel who never dares to close their eyes. You carry the crushing weight of the entire world upon your own narrow shoulders. You grip the scepter called control so tightly that your knuckles turn white, gripping it until you are completely spiritually drained. In every moment where you try to control but ultimately fail, you taste a bone-deep, bitter frustration and rage. But in this moment, in this sacred healing journey, we are going to travel to a place that is exceptionally dark, yet incredibly safe. We are going there too, bit by bit. Pry open your rigid fingers and help you completely surrender that heavy scepter. Please follow my voice, within your subconscious. Take a deep breath. Notice the temperature of the air shifting. The dry heat of the desert is gone, replaced by a refreshing, bone-deep coolness mingled with the scent of damp earth, the faint fragrance of green moss, and the ancient, profound aroma seeping from the cracks of the rocks. You are slowly stepping into a massive, bottomless gorge. This is the famous Valley of the Shadow of Death from Psalm 23. Do not be frightened by the name the Shadow of Death. It does not signify literal physical death. It signifies an extreme, enveloping darkness, a state of the unknown where you completely lose visual control over your surroundings. Look up. On either side are towering walls of black rock, reaching into the clouds, squeezing the sky into a faint, pale silver thread. The sunlight cannot possibly penetrate this extreme abyss, and the floor of the valley is cloaked in a heavy, freezing fog. Within this dark gorge there is a shepherd, trudging forward with immense difficulty. I invite you to trace the silhouette of this shepherd in your mind. He is walking at the very front of his flock, immersed in this pitch black, suffocating darkness. Because of his extreme tension, his heart is pounding like a frantic war drum. His rough, weathered hands are gripping a heavy, wooden shepherd's staff with every ounce of his desperate strength. The muscles in his arms are violently cramping from the over-aggression, his palms slick with cold sweat. He stares wide-eyed into the blackness, desperately trying to visually pierce every shadow lurking behind the rocks, straining his ears to discern if the howling wind masks the panting of wild beasts. He is so terrified. He is terrified of losing his flock. He is terrified that a single moment of negligence will bring about total annihilation. In this perilous valley, he is trying to use his minuscule, insignificant human strength to battle the darkness of the entire abyss. Every step he takes drains the last reserves of his energy. Every breath he draws is a heavy, ragged gasp. That shepherd, covered in cold sweat, gripping the staff in the dark. That is you. You treat your career, your family, and all the people and situations you care about as the flock you must defend with your life. When you walk into the dark, unpredictable, and shifting low valleys of life, your immediate instinct is to grip the staff of control even tighter. You try to use anxiety to prevent disaster. You try to use compulsive overthinking to illuminate the terrifying unknown. You operate under the illusion that if you are just vigilant enough, if you just try hard enough, you can protect everything from harm. But you have forgotten how remarkably fragile human strength truly is when standing before the vastness of fate and the abyss of the unknown. You are attempting to play the role of an omnipotent God, trying to orchestrate things you have absolutely no power over. It is precisely this transgressive desire for control, this delusional belief that I must fix everything, that serves as the root of all your anxiety, all your rage, and all your exhaustion. Now, it is time to stop. You have walked far too long and grown far too tired in this dark valley. I invite you to draw all of your attention entirely to your hands in this exact moment. Imagine that your hands are locked in a death grip around that heavy, rough wooden staff representing your desire for control. Feel the hard, unyielding texture of the wood. Notice the agonizing ache and tension radiating up the muscles of your arms. Now inhale, deeply, deeply. As you draw the breath in, allow the cool, soothing fog to travel through your nasal passages, straight down into your chest, flowing outwards into your arms. And then, incredibly slowly, exhale. In the exact moment of your exhalation, issue a crystal clear command in your mind. Release. Let your thumb be the first to leave the staff. Then, your index finger, your middle finger, your ring finger, your pinky. One by one, agonizingly slowly, peel away your compulsive, desperate grasping of this world. Feel that heavy wooden staff slip from the center of your palms. Hear the muffled, resonant thud as it falls upon the damp, mossy earth of the valley floor. In the moment the staff drops, allow your tense arms to fall completely, heavily to your side, like ropes that have suddenly lost all tension. Let your shoulders sink down, sink deeper. Experience that profound, overwhelming sense of limpness and relief that only comes from utterly abandoning the fight. The story, deeper within the valley, reaches its divine turning point when that utterly depleted shepherd finally releases the staff from his exhausted hands, when he finally closes those eyes that strain so hard to pierce the darkness in sheer despair. A miracle descends in the exact moment. He abandons his defense. Because he has surrendered his visual struggle, his sense of hearing becomes miraculously sharp. In the dead silence of the shadowy valley, he suddenly hears a sound that is incredibly soft, incredibly steady. It is the sound of moving water. It is the sound of a clear, gentle stream flowing smoothly over moss-covered stones. And immediately following from the depths of the water's song, he senses a massive, warm presence, a presence brimming with boundless majesty and bottomless love wrapping completely and entirely around his being. In that singular moment, the shepherd understands. In this valley of the shadow of death, he was never the lone protector. He believed himself to be the shepherd leading the flock, But in reality, he too was nothing but a fragile, vulnerable sheep desperately in need of guidance. In the deepest heart of this darkness, there exists a true, great shepherd. The staff of that great shepherd, the staff that represents the highest sovereignty and divine order of the cosmos, is firmly, invisibly blocking every storm and every beast on his behalf. Just as the ancient, ultimately comforting chant of the Psalms declares, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." Did you hear that? For you are with me. What a magnificent, paradigm-shifting spiritual reversal. It turns out that true security never comes from your desperate, white-knuckled grip on reality. True security comes from the moment you finally dare to confess, "I am powerless. But I am held, anchored, and supported by a grace higher and wider than I could ever comprehend." When you stop trying to play the God who orchestrates the entire board, when you finally admit your own limitations, your fragility, and your ignorance, you do not plummet into the abyss. On the contrary, you fall backward into a massive, unimaginably soft embrace. You no longer need to agonize over the disasters that might occur tomorrow, because tomorrow is not in your jurisdiction. You no longer need to be infuriated by others who fail to meet your expectations, because you are no longer attempting to control them. You have fully surrendered the compulsive management of your life. Within this sacred presence, you retreat from being an overwhelmed, easily angered manager, returning to the state of a child who can peacefully close their eyes, tenderly watched over by the laws of the universe. Now, allow this weightless, unburdened sensation to flow through your entire body, carrying the rhythm of the gentle stream in the valley. Inhale deeply, breathing in this sacred energy that takes over all your heavy lifting. Exhale deeply, and within the comforting lullaby of the water, allow your physical body to become like a pool of water itself, soft, formless, completely yielding to the supportive mattress beneath you. Imagine yourself following the murmuring sound of the water, walking out of the darkest narrows of the gorge. Rising up to meet you is a vast, expansive and possibly soft expanse of green pastures. The night dew has dampened the grass, releasing an incredibly fresh, sleep-inducing fragrance. You lay down upon this boundless meadow, feeling the most grounded, sturdy spine of Mother Earth beneath you. Notice your back melting deeply into the soft grass. The gravity of the earth acts like a giant, warm net, catching you securely. Your legs become unimaginably heavy. Your torso becomes unimaginably heavy. Your head sinks deeply into the earth. There is nothing left for you to grasp. There is no person, no situation in this world worth expending even a single ounce of your energy on anymore. You have handed the steering wheel of your life over to that greater presence. Now you need only enjoy the deep rest of the passenger seat. In this corner of the cosmos where nothing requires your worry, allow your consciousness to blur. Listen to the water. Slowly, it grows softer. It drifts further away. 1, 2, 3. Utterly relax. Utterly descend. Here, in these green pastures, you have completely surrendered the wooden staff of your compulsive control. The profound grounding of no longer having to shield yourself from the storm pulls you down into a defenseless, fathomless water depressed. The murmuring sound of the stream seems to still linger softly by your ear. Now, do not rush to open your eyes. Surrendering control was only the first step. Please allow your consciousness to follow this gentle current, flowing forward ever so slowly, inch by inch, guided by the sound of my voice. We are going to leave this cool sanctuary. Take a deep breath. Notice the air around you undergoing a violent, dramatic shift. The refreshing coolness rapidly evaporates, replaced by an intensely dry, scorching wave of heat. You can feel that the light surrounding you is so blindingly bright that it pierces right through your tightly closed eyelids. We have touched down, right now at high noon in the region of Samaria in the Middle East. Over 2,000 years ago, this is the most excruciating hour of the day. The sun beats down from the zenith of the sky. There is not a single wisp of cloud, not the faintest breath of wind. The sun above is like a massive, burning sphere of fire, mercilessly baking the cracked, parched earth. You can almost feel the scorching yellow dust beneath your feet with every step. A suffocating cloud of dirt kicks up into the air. The very atmosphere seems to warp and distort from the sheer intensity of the heat. Under this brutal sun, your lips begin to crack. Deep within your throat, you feel a tightening, agonizing sensation of extreme thirst. This is a visceral, desperate biological craving to be watered. In the center of this barren wasteland sits an ancient, deep well, Jacob's well. The well is so deep that even the blinding midday sun cannot pierce the darkness to illuminate the water at the bottom. The stones at the edge of the well bear deep, grooved scars, worn away by the friction of rough-hewn probes over thousands of years. And right at this moment, a time when even the birds have hidden in the rock crevices to escape the heat, a solitary figure is trudging painfully toward the well. It is a woman. Upon her shoulders rests a massive, agonizingly heavy earthen water jar. You can clearly trace her posture in your mind's eye. Her spine is painfully bowed under the sheer weight of the clay, the rough-hewn probe biting deep into the flesh of her shoulders, leaving raised, red welts. She is gasping heavily for air. Sweat mixed with the yellow dust streams down her face, stinging her eyes. Why would she come to draw water at such a brutal hour? Because she is terrified of the crowds. She is terrified of the women who gather at the well in the cool of the morning and evening. She is terrified of their judging, mocking, and contemptuous stares. Her life is a tapestry of broken ends and shame, and so she has no choice but to endure this dual agony of physical and mental torment all alone, in the most punishing, isolating heat of the day. She approaches the well, dropping the heavy, empty jar onto the stone slabs with a heavy thud. With practiced yet numb movements, she ties the rope to the jar and hurls it into the bottomless darkness. Listen. The echoing clatter of the clay jar banging against the dark walls of the shaft, until, with a hollow, distant splash, it finally breaches the surface of the water, and then she must summon every last ounce of her remaining strength to painstakingly haul the water-filled jar, now dozens of times heavier than before, up from the abyss. Desperate, she cups the muddy well water in her hands, swallowing it down in great gulps, trying to extinguish the fire burning inside her. But as the cool water slides down her throat, it offers only a fleeting moment of relief. She knows that she cannot carry this heavy jar for a single day longer, yet she knows that by tomorrow this agonizing, burning thirst will return with a vengeance. She will be forced to brave the blinding sun once more, hoisting the crushing weight upon her back, repeating this endless, despairing labor. That person, standing under the scorching midday sun, carrying the heavy earthen jar, desperately begging for water from the well, that person is you. In the arid, modern wasteland of society, deep within your own soul, there is an equally profound, maddening thirst. It is a desperate, gaping void, a severe deficiency of love, validation, and the feeling of being truly understood. That Jacob's well, that is the world around you. It is your partner, your boss, your colleagues, even the likes and comments on your social media feeds. And that massive, heavy earthen jar crushing your shoulders, that is the massive weight of your expectations toward the outside world. Every single day, you do the exact same thing as that Samaritan woman. You carefully, cautiously people please. You work yourself to the bone trying to prove your worth. You grit your teeth in every argument, desperate to gain the upper hand. You hurl that massive, empty jar called self-worth down into the emotional wells of other people, over and over again, desperately trying to haul up a pitiful few drops of validation and security. When people agree with you, when they praise you, it registers as a few gulps of water, offering a brief, fleeting moment of satisfaction. But the very second someone misunderstands you, the moment things deviate from your expectations, the moment that well runs dry, you instantly plunge into blinding panic and explosive rage. The root reason you are so easily provoked is simply this: you are just thirsty. If a person who is dying of thirst sees someone with cold water, or even knock their cup to the ground, how could they not fly into a rage? You have entirely outsourced your joy, your sorrow, the very lifeline of your soul, to an external well that could dry up at any moment. Your pathological dependency on the emotional feedback of others has reduced you to an incredibly fragile, desperate beggar. As long as you are seeking fulfillment from the outside, as long as you expect others to fill your void, you will never, ever escape the fate of being easily provoked, because the water of this world operates on one rule: everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. Now, it is time to set down that heavy earthen jar. You do not need to live this exhausting lie anymore. please allow my voice to guide your attention to your shoulders. Notice them. Can you feel the accumulated ache and rigidity built up over years and months? That is the physical brand left behind by carrying the crushing weight of expectations and defensiveness. Now, inhale deeply, and as you draw the breath in, imagine yourself taking that impossibly heavy earthen jar filled to the brim with your anxiety over what others think of you, your desperation for external feedback, and ever so slowly, slipping it off your shoulders, slowly, and with a long, drawn-out exhale. In the exact moment of your breath leaving you, hear a loud, resounding thud in your mind. The heavy earthen jar has finally hit the ground, completely severing its connection to your body. Allow your shoulders to naturally sink deeper. Experience the faint warmth, the incredible, weightless release in your cervical spine and shoulders now that the burden is gone. Do not reach for that abrasive hem probe again. Lay your hands flat by your sides, palms facing upward, fingers naturally, softly curled, adopting a posture that completely surrenders the act of grasping, a posture of absolute, open receptivity. In this moment of profound, safe suspension, the story at Jacob's well reaches its divine turning point. Just as the woman sits by the well, gasping in despair, a stranger, the weary traveler named Jesus, sits down beside the well. He looks at her with a gaze that is incredibly gentle, yet pierces through all illusion, and speaks words that will entirely upend her existence. Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water, welling up to eternal life. Will never thirst, will become in them a spring. Allow those words to fall into the parched depths of your consciousness, slowly, drop by drop, like liquid gold. What a staggering cosmic declaration of spiritual freedom. The true antidote, the true rest was never out there to begin with. You no longer need to carry that shattered earthen jar, begging for muddy water from the wells of others, because deep within the most profound depths of your own soul, a never-ending source of living water, forged of divine grace, has already been placed. When you truly plug into this internal spring, when you understand that your very existence is deeply, unconditionally loved and accepted by the highest power of the universe, you no longer need the outside world to validate your worth. Just imagine if your inner world has transformed into a vast, cooling, infinite ocean. Then, what does one venomous remark, one contemptuous glare from the outside world, actually amount to? They are nothing but a lit match thrown into a boundless deep sea. You do not need to fight it. You do not need to put it out. With a faint hiss, it instantly extinguishes itself, unable to stir even the slightest ripple. When you no longer thirst for the approval of others, others completely lose the power to provoke you. You have permanently severed the puppet strings that allowed external words to manipulate your emotions. You stand in this world entirely self-sufficient, entirely whole, and entirely complete. Now, let us go together to awaken that inner source of living water. Inhale deeply. Draw your consciousness inward, contracting inward, downward, sinking into the very deepest chamber of your chest. Imagine, right there, an incredibly cool and possibly pure spring of water slowly, gently bubbling up to the surface. Exhale slowly. Feel this cooling spring water wash over your long parched throat, smoothing out every single impulse to argue or defend yourself. Inhale deeply. The living water continues to well up. Exhale. This cooling energy flows into your heart, entirely extinguishing the scorching fires of anxiety and grievance burning there. The rhythm of your heartbeat becomes just like this spring, steady, smooth, and endlessly long. Inhale deeply. Let this pure current flow alongside your bloodstream, traveling to every limb and every bone. Exhale, washing away the very last traces of tension and defensiveness held in your muscles. Under this cooling wash, your arms and your legs become heavier and heavier, sinking profoundly into the soft support beneath you. The brutal heat of the Samaritan noon has been completely banished by this internal, cooling grace. You are no longer the exhausted, resentful water drawer. You have transformed into a silent observer, guarding an internal, deep-sea sanctuary. No matter how loud the outside world screams, it is nothing more than a faint breeze blowing over the top of the well. Now, there is absolutely nothing left to think about. You possess an endless, unceasing source of nourishment. Allow this internal coolness, harmonized with every slow, deliberate breath you take, to wrap you entirely in a cocoon of absolute safety. Beside this inexhaustible inner spring of living water, you have permanently laid down the heavy jar of seeking external validation. That self-sufficient, profound coolness is right now flowing through your veins, incredibly slowly, incredibly quietly. But as we find liberation from the outward thirst, the true challenge is only just beginning. Now, please continue to keep your eyes firmly closed. Do not attempt to catch any external light, even the faintest shift in shadow behind your eyelids. Gently, tenderly block it out. Reel your consciousness in, bringing it to the very surface layer of your body, your skin, your eardrums, your optic nerves. During those days that leave you utterly spiritually depleted, have you ever noticed that you operate like a receiver covered in hypersensitive antennas? Your senses are locked in a state of hyper-arousal, yet are devastatingly fragile and overloaded. When someone shoots you a look that is merely a slight frown, your stomach instantly violently cramps. When someone speaks a barbed word to you with a slightly elevated volume, your heart rate instantly skyrockets, and your blood rushes uncontrollably to your brain. You think you are processing this information with your rational mind, but in reality, your physical body is being brutally hijacked by external stimuli. Those sharp noises, those hostile glares are like electrified whips, striking mercilessly against your nerve endings. You produce violent stress responses to every microscopic shift in your environment. You try to manage the situation, but the tragic truth is that your emotions and your physiological responses have long since become the marionettes of other people's sensory inputs. Now, in this long, profoundly silent journey of healing, we are going to undergo a deep, radical sensory deprivation. We are going to dive into the abyssal depths known as the dark night of the soul, to sever every single one of those agonizing neural connections. Please follow my voice, and draw in a deep breath. Feel the space around you undergoing a bizarre, miraculous collapse. The vast Samaritan wilderness vanishes. You are now placed within a terrifyingly narrow, claustrophobic dungeon cell in a 16th century monastery in Toledo, Spain. This is the very place where the great mystical theologian John of the Cross was held captive. I invite you to use your sense of touch to perceive this space within your mind. The walls here are rough, freezing stone. The space is so confined that you cannot even stand fully upright. But more importantly, there is no light here, not a single microscopic sliver of a crack. It is an absolute, ultimate darkness, a blackness so dense it feels as though it possesses physical weight, wrapping around your entire body like a thick, heavy blanket of black velvet. There is no sound here either, no wind, no birdsong. Even the footsteps of the jailers are entirely muffled by the massive stone walls. It is an awe-inspiring, dead silence, the kind of silence where you can hear your own blood rushing through your veins. Here, your eyes are rendered useless. Because there is absolutely nothing to see, your ears are rendered useless. Because there is absolutely nothing to hear. Every sensory tentacle that frantically reaches outward has been forcibly, entirely amputated by this extreme environment. This sounds like a horrifying punishment, doesn't it? But for you, someone trapped in the modern social jungle, bombarded every day by a lethal overdose of information, until your nerves are frayed to breaking this absolute darkness. This dead silence is actually the most tender, the most profound sanctuary the universe could ever grant you. Because when the eyes can no longer see the judgments of the world, when the ears can no longer hear the roar of the crowds, that soul which has been crashing blindly into external walls like a panicked fly for so long, is finally forcibly brought to a halt. Stripped of all external handholds, it has no choice but to fall inward, powerless yet inevitably. It plummets into the deepest, most authentic core of the true self. This is what John of the Cross called the dark night of the soul. In this dark night, divine power is not punishing you, it is, with unimaginable gentleness, stripping off the overstimulated garments of your senses piece by piece. It seeks to render you entirely numb to external provocations so that deep within, it can awaken an ultimate, sovereign sensitivity that cannot be disturbed by anything in creation. Now, let us actively, willingly embrace this sensory hibernation. Gather your attention to your eyes. Notice your eyelids. From being closed for so long, they have become incredibly heavy. Imagine your eyeballs slowly, ever so slowly, sinking deeper and deeper into the sockets of your skull. Sink in. Inhale deeply. And with the breath, surrender the very desire to see. Exhale slowly, and issue a command in your mind to sever the connection to your optic nerves. Tell yourself no matter what glares, what expressions exist out there in the world, right now, in this absolute darkness, they have completely vanished. They have lost their physical existence, and therefore they have permanently lost the power to harm you. Next, shift your attention to your ears. Listen to my voice, but simultaneously, feel the profound, silent static humming beneath my words. Imagine an invisible, soundproof glass dome slowly descending over you. Inhale deeply, accepting any microscopic sounds that might exist in your physical environment. Exhale deeply, and in the moment of release, strip those sounds of their meaning. Take all the words that pierced you today, all the harsh criticisms, and reduce them to their most basic physics. They are nothing more than vocal cords vibrating the air, producing a sequence of sound waves. They are just vibrations, without your permission, without that internal translator you call caring. Those sound waves cannot even penetrate your skin, let alone touch your soul. Feel your body under this heavy blanket of sensory deprivation, becoming heavier and heavier. Stripped of the pulling of vision, stripped of the startling of hearing, your muscles can finally entirely abandon that brace. Calm that ready tension. Your arms lie heavy and flat against your sides. Your spine releases vertebra by vertebra, melting deeply into the support beneath you. The story within that dark dungeon dives even deeper. Imprisoned in absolute blackness, Street. John of the Cross endured physical starvation and freezing cold. His jailers attempted to use this extreme sensory deprivation to break his will, to force his submission, to incite his rage. If it were an ordinary person in such hopeless, impenetrable darkness, they would have long since descended into hysterical madness. They would curse in fury. They would smash their heads against the stone walls in despair. They would be tortured to death by their own burning resentment. But Street, John of the Cross, did not. After enduring the initial agony of the stripping away, he did not fight the boundless dark. Instead, he leaned back, entirely surrendering himself to this abyss called the dark night. And in the exact moment he ceased all struggling, the moment he allowed the tentacles of his senses to snap one by one, a miracle descended. In that terrifyingly dark cell, from the deepest core of his soul, erupted the most brilliant, unfathomable spiritual light in human history. He discovered that when he was no longer stimulated by anything external, when he completely lost his compulsive grip on his sense of self-existence, that vast, boundless divine presence rushed in to fill every inch of his internal space. His jailers could lock up his physical body. They could strip away his sight and his hearing. They could slander him and torture him to their heart's content. But they could never, ever touch that absolute, inner sanctuary that had already merged entirely with divine grace. It was there that he penned the poem that would echo through eternity one dark night, fired with love's urgent longings. Ah, the sheer grace! I went out unseen, my house being now all stilled. My house being now all stilled. Allow this phrase to resonate through your physical body, harmonizing with your heavy, rhythmic breathing. Your physical body is this house. And now, you too must allow it to be completely, entirely stilled. Try to step into the ultimate ecstasy and freedom that Street, John of the Cross, experienced in that blinding darkness. When you no longer need your eyes to confirm the approval of others, when you no longer need your ears to hypervigilantly track the shifting winds of the outside world, when you have completely severed the wiring between external stimuli and your emotional reactions, you become a phantom in this world, utterly, absolutely free. Those who try to provoke you are merely throwing punches at the empty night sky. They scheme and plot to sting you, to ignite your fury, but you simply rest within that vast, expansive darkness without form, without borders. Their fists hit nothing but air, their words dissolve into absolute nothingness. What a terrifyingly powerful force this is. This is not suppression. This is not bottling it up. This is a transcendent, higher dimensional compassion and release. You do not even need to forgive them, you have simply, utterly become immune to them. Now, allow this ultimate relaxation of absolute immunity to take over your entire body. Inhale deeply, breathing in the incredibly pure, incredibly safe darkness of this cell. Exhale deeply, letting your body feel as though it is melting into this black velvet. You can no longer feel the boundaries of your hands and feet. You can no longer trace the silhouette of your skin. You are no longer a tangible target waiting to be struck. You have dissolved into a vast, silent, holy void. In this void there is nothing left for you to control, because everything has been reset to zero. In this absolutely safe dark night of the soul, you can finally lay down every single defense mechanism, experiencing the weightless ecstasy of falling downward, plunging toward the deepest, most tranquil trench of the subconscious sea. You do not need to think. You do not need to respond. In this dark night, entirely free from sensory hijacking, you have undergone a complete sensory hibernation. The glares and words that once pierced you so easily have lost all their coordinates in that thick blackness. That ultimate numbness and peace, born of severing every neural wire, is right now spreading smoothly across every inch of your skin, like a pristine beach after the tide has rolled out.